Now, today's episode will focus on AARP Indiana's Prepare to Care Guide, which will provide our audience practical tools to help you care for your family member or a close friend. We hope you'll find great information, resources, and checklists to help you get organized and find the support that you might need. So without further delay, I want to hand this program over to Jeff and Emily to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for that wonderful introduction. And hi, Jeff, how are you today?
Hey, Emily, doing great. So sun shining and nice and warm outside. So doing very well. Thank you.
And tell us where you are in Indiana.
I am on the west side of Fort Wayne. So just hanging out at home, me and my dog and right now. So just having a good time.
Living the dream. And I'm located in Indianapolis, and it's also beautiful down here today. It does not feel like a mid-November day.
Right.
In just a second, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through AARP's Prepare to Care Guide. I'm very excited to share this with everybody today. I will say there's some really wonderful resources in this guide that I'm hoping you will all be able to take away from this. So if you bear with me for one moment, I'm going to share my screen and get the presentation started. Just to remind everybody, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please drop them in the Q&A box, and that will pop up on the screen for Jeff and I to be able to see if you have any questions throughout. So can you see that, Jeff, on your end?
I can.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to kick things off. Welcome to today's presentation for our Prepare to Care Guide. We want this to be interactive. So again, please do ask questions throughout, or if you have anything to share, any tidbits, please just drop them in for us to see so we can share with the group. I'm gonna click to the next slide. Here is today's agenda for what we are hoping to cover. And so really today's guide is to give you a 5-step caregiving plan so that you can feel ready and prepared if you are looking ahead for you or a loved one or a family member. This program is really designed to equip you with the framework for all the tools you might need to prepare to be a caregiver. And Jeff, feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything along the way.
Sure will.
So I want you to be able to feel like you can bring this back to people in your circle at home, take away notes from this session today to bring back to people. We're going to go through the steps for how to build your team because caregiving shouldn't be a lonely process. And hopefully you'll learn from this presentation that building a team around you is one of the most important steps in this process. And so we want you to be able to take down notes. We're going to drop a bunch of links in the chat for you to use and take back with you as well. And AARP is really just a huge wealth of resources for all things caregiving. And so hopefully we're going to be able to show you all the different places you can go to find all the tools that you might need. You can order a physical copy of this guide, the Prepare to Care Guide, if you go to aarp.org/prepare-to-care. You should be able to order one of your own copies that will be sent to you for free, which is a really wonderful resource. So you can have, I know there's lots of people who like to have a paper copy of things. And so you can order that for free through our website. And I will drop that link in the chat momentarily.
I do want to say that document is very, very helpful as you're thinking through what needs to be done and who does what. And it just includes things like, where is the will, where is, where are the bank accounts, and things like that. So some real practical information as well as questions that you might need to answer as you prepare.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like it's a very simple guide for something that feels very complex, but keeps it nice and simple and laid out in a way that's just easy to digest and doesn't feel quite as overwhelming. So I'm gonna go to the next slide and get us started here. All right, so family caregivers juggle many tasks. And so many people might not even realize that they have already been a caregiver in some way, form, or shape in their life. So for example, to get a picture of what a caregiver in today's world might look like, if you've ever helped a loved one with household tasks, such as doing their cleaning or helping with laundry or yard work, mowing the lawn for somebody who might not be able to anymore, have you ever gone to pick up a prescription for somebody else who might not be able to go and pick that up? Do you ever drop off meals for your neighbor or a family member who might be in need? Do you ever help drive someone to a doctor's appointment or take them on a shopping trip or just to get their groceries and things like that? Do you ever help with personal care, such as bathing or dressing of a loved one or a family member? Do you ever help with finances or helping them to pay their bills and navigating the new online world and how complex that can be sometimes? Have you ever found yourself providing emotional support for someone or just companionship and stopping by and saying hi and checking on them might be the only touch point that somebody has with another human being throughout their day? And do you ever communicate with health professionals and coordinate healthcare for somebody else? And if the answer is yes to any of those things, or if you find yourself raising your hand, then you have or are currently a caregiver, and you might not even realize it. It's a very broad scope of things that might define you as a caregiver. What am I missing, Jeff?
Well, I think just sometimes, looking out for the little things. So, for example, one time I recall my mom put something in the microwave for well over an hour that only needed a couple of minutes. And so just paying attention where to things that might otherwise slip through the cracks.
Yeah, definitely. So this is just a bit of history on AARP. AARP's founder, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, was a caregiver for her parents. And so caregiving is truly in AARP's DNA. A quote from Dr. Andrus was that it is only in the giving of oneself to others that we truly live. The human contribution is the essential ingredient. Dr. Andrus was an educator, and her passion was to help older Americans lead lives of independence, dignity, and purpose. And she founded the National Retired Teachers Association in 1947 and later founded AARP in 1958. And so, as I said, caregiving is truly in the DNA of AARP, and we look to support family caregivers through everything that we do, whether that's through our outreach programs, through our online resources, which I'm going to dive into a little bit more here, or whether it's through our advocacy efforts on a local, state, and federal level. We try and weave it through everything that we do. So I thought it was an interesting quote to share. Let's see. Okay, so question, are you prepared to be a caregiver? And as we mentioned, being a caregiver requires you to juggle many, many tasks, and you might find yourself feeling a little bit like the person in this picture with a million tennis balls up in the air. And it probably feels incredibly overwhelming, I'm sure. I did want to just throw out some wild statistics and facts that I have that blew my mind when I first learned these. But family caregivers provide the majority of long-term care in the United States. So people who are in their home, their family members and loved ones are providing the care for them. The average family caregiver is a 49-year-old woman who works 35 hours a week and provides almost 25 hours of care per week. So working almost full-time and providing 25 hours of care per week. More than 48 million family caregivers each year provide care for their aging parents, their spouses, aunts, uncles, friends, and other loved ones. In 2020, more than 41 million of them are giving care to somebody over the age of 50. And caregiving affects the entire family. Men are now almost as likely to say that they are family caregivers as much as women. So it's 40% of men are caregiving in the United States right now and 60% of women. And 24% of younger Americans ages 18 to 34 are family caregivers. So some of those statistics are crazy to me to actually think about and wrap my mind around. Jeff, any thoughts?
Sure. I'm glad that you mentioned those statistics. I know in my situation, 2 out of 3 of between me and my siblings were males taking care of our mom, and so we fit into a statistic. I also happen to be married to someone who works in the industry. And it's real obvious when there isn't a team approach, when there isn't a plan. And because in her case, she works in independent living, and suddenly things break down quickly when there's not an identified team. So and plan. So caregiving has to be on our minds, or it can get real messy.
Yeah, that's a great point, and brings me to my next slide, actually. So this is the key part of today's session. We're going to hopefully equip you with AARP's 5 steps to creating a plan, and encompass all the things that you might need to think about, to Jeff's point, to make sure that you have your team in place and you have your plan in place so that you don't need to feel quite as overwhelmed as you might find yourself feeling. Many of us will have a personal connection to whoever we are caregiving for, and so that adds an extra level of complexity to it. So our 5 steps, just to give you a high-level view of what we're about to dive into. Starting the conversation is number 1. Forming your team is number 2. Making a plan is number 3. Finding support, which is where all of my links and resources are going to come in. And then caring for yourself, which is so often forgotten in this process, is taking care of yourself, you as the caregiver. And so we're going to go through a couple of suggestions and ways to make sure that you're keeping that in mind as part of this 5-step process for being a caregiver. Okay. Step 1, starting the conversation. Sounds incredibly simple, often the hardest step, I would say. So certainly true in my own family. Sometimes tough conversations like this are avoided. You don't want to bring it up, or you don't know what somebody's reaction is going to be. Are you going to be offending them, that you are making an assumption that they've reached a point in their life where they might need extra help? What if they take it the wrong way? All of those things kind of go through your mind. But also sometimes it's just hard to accept that changes are coming and happening. I know that's certainly true for me in my personal life. Many people wait until it's a crisis or it's urgent before they have that conversation, or wish they had had that conversation with their loved one. And it's just not easy to start the conversation. But the first step is just starting it. I'm going to go to the next slide. And Jeff, please chime in if I'm missing things or going too quickly.
Well, the first thing you do is you look for an opening. So, so for example, my siblings and I lived out of state. And so when we converged upon my parents' home, we had probably had conversations beforehand, and so all 3 of us were looking for those opportunities without looking like we were ganging up upon them. So, but take advantage of what's there, and sometimes you have to bite the bullet and do things that are courageous, including and maybe especially with parents.
Definitely. And I think the other point for starting the conversation, you raised a point of that we're going to dive into a little bit later on about what if you don't live near your family member, if what if you aren't physically close to them in proximity, and we'll dive into that a little bit more in a second. But something that, and as a tip for just starting the conversation, is seeing if you can make it flow in conversation with something else. So, for example, you know, just making it crop up naturally in conversation. So I just read an article about gathering all your important papers and how important it is to do that. At some point, can you show me where your papers are and where your documents are, just in case I ever needed to find them? And just kind of navigating the conversation that way, so it's not like a sudden, almost intervention style conversation, might help things flow a little bit better. The key is to try not to anticipate what you think they might say or how you think they might react. The important thing is just to get the conversation started, and you might be surprised by their response. Oh, I did have highlighted that I wanted to point out that it's important to respect your loved one's wishes. Make sure that they are participating in this conversation throughout. It's important to not let them or have them feel like you are having the conversation without them, or that you are you know, not including them in every step of the way. You want to make sure that they are a part of the caregiving plan as much as possible throughout.
At the same time, it's important to stress the importance of the conversation. You know, sometimes you have to be honest with people who perhaps you're afraid you're going to harm emotionally, and just say, look, that somebody's going to have to make this decision. And so my goal and my hope is that we can do it together versus suddenly I find out that it's my decision and I can't honor your wishes because I never knew what those were.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. And then lastly, just making sure that you remember to listen, so that it can help you size up the situation and inform your next steps when it comes to making the plan. So just, you know, make sure that you're listening to what their wishes are and what is important to them. Oh, there we go. Okay, finances. Also a tough conversation. So I'm going to share a couple links in the chat. Jeff, I don't know if you're able to start this slide off for me while I do that, just so I can give people the links they might need.
Sure. My parents were married for 65 years, and I would, you know, originally thought, well, they probably had the same bank account for 65 years, and come to find out they had moved on from the local bank, mainly because they had closed. So it's important to know, you know, to have the updated information, not so much, you know, how much money do they have, how much money are they leaving you and so forth when they pass on, but where is that information, so that as things progress, you can make decisions on their behalf. You know, I have had many conversations with their financial and their investment advisor and so forth, and you know, what was their thinking and so forth, and learn more about them actually from the person they were working with than from their own conversation. But I was able to honor their wishes, and still am in the process of that. What insurance coverage do they have? You know, is there, you know, a lot of life insurance out there? Is it term insurance that's going to end, or is it whole life? Is it only, if it's your parents, is it only on one member or the other? So know what's available and what you're dealing with. And if you can, have conversations with those companies to kind of find out what's the process of making a claim when that happens and so forth. And then just what else is laying around. When my father passed away, my brother and sister were doing the cleaning of the house, so to speak, and they found thousands of dollars in cash that obviously wasn't anything that was being tracked and so forth. So I'm not sure what happened to it. I know I didn't get it, but anyway, we did. You know, we were able to find other sources of money that we just didn't know about until we stumbled upon it. So get as much information as you can in a helpful way. If it's perceived as you're being selfish or trying to take advantage of the situation, obviously that won't go well. But that's hopefully not anybody's intent and so forth. So just know what you're trying to do, so you can, again, the whole idea is to make decisions on behalf of somebody that you're caring about.
All wonderful points. Thank you, Jeff. And AARP does have we have a caregiving financial workbook that you can access. And for some reason, I'm not able to access the chat while I have the slides open. So I'm going to post all these at the end. But you can head to our website and find a workbook that will help you navigate some of these conversations and, trigger your memory of the things that you might need to be thinking of when it comes to finances. Okay, so as I mentioned before, what if your conversation doesn't go quite as you planned it? Or what if you are met with some resistance, like, I just don't want to think about this, or I just don't want to talk about this, I'm not ready yet. Which I think is the first thing that probably comes into most of our minds when we think about starting the conversation. Just keep in mind that this is a very sensitive topic and that reaction is very normal. And sometimes it's just allowing people time to process and come around to things. It doesn't have to be a forced conversation. If the first conversation doesn't go well, that's okay. You can try again. And the other key to this is maybe the conversation doesn't need to be started by you directly. Maybe it will come through other people in their circle, church members, friends, other community members. Maybe it doesn't have to come directly from you, who is so close to the situation. Yeah, I think that was the key point there. Okay, we're on to step 2. Forming your team, which, as Jeff shared earlier, and one of probably the most important step is making sure that you have a team. Oh, good, I clicked next by accident. Never mind. But all I was going to say is caring for a family member or a loved one is too big of a job for one person. You shouldn't feel like you are completely alone in this. And even if you feel like you are far away, hopefully throughout the rest of these slides in this session, we can show you that there are resources out there. There are agencies out there that are designed to help support you, and you're not alone. We also have support groups too that I can share some links to that might help as well. Anything I'm missing, Jeff?
I don't think so.
Okay, let me skip to my next slide. Okay, so where we want to look for team members to help you form your team. Obviously, the first one that might kind of just be a given in your mind is proximity. So looking for people who are in a close radius physically to the person who is in need of care, who can provide those services such as dropping off a cooked meal or taking somebody to a doctor's appointment, or helping with laundry and simple household tasks. That might not sound like a huge task, but those little things pieced together can make such a big difference. Sharing talents with people on your team and accepting that you can't do everything. As you start to build people in your support circle, utilize, if you have, if there's a grandkid in the family or something who is a whiz on the computer, they might be the right person to set up an online calendar that helps, plan out all the appointments coming up or the days that certain people are helping with the person who's in need of care. So on Mondays, it's Jeff, on Tuesdays, it's Linda, and, going through that way. It might just make things seem a bit more clear and a little bit more simple. Is there somebody who loves gardening who might be able to go over and mow the lawn once a week? Just identifying little tasks like that really help to just formulate a bigger picture. And to Jeff's point earlier, what if you don't live close to your loved one who's in need of care? We would recommend contacting your local area agency on aging or your local AAA. There, especially in Indiana, there are regions, each region has a local area agency on aging, and they are the most helpful people and organization in terms of building a support team and providing resources, like such important resources that you might need. And just picking up the phone and calling them might help ease your mind if you don't live close to that person who is in need of care.
I think if you do have a kind of a lead caregiver, if you will, that you're in contact with that person frequently, and you're honest about, here's what I'm able to do. It's a, a 3-leg flight in order to get there, those types of things. So be honest about what you can do, and also, say, hey, I'm going to be visiting, in 2 weeks. So start making a list of things that I can help to, kind of be a relief pitcher, if you will. I remember in our case, one of the things is I just need a weekend off. So, so those little things, part of this, it's a team. It's certainly the number one focus is the loved one, but we also are trying to take care of the team. And so, on occasion, step up and take the ball and become the relief pitcher.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a great point. So, and then continuing on from that, building and supporting your team. So determine the number of members that you want to have on your team. So both quantity and quality are important in this when you're thinking about building your team. Having a large caregiving team can be helpful in many ways in terms of delegating and dividing up the roles. However, sometimes large groups of people, especially if they are related to one another, can be hard to manage. And so thinking about quality and the people who you are assigning roles and responsibilities to is really important. And so to Jeff's point, having a lead caregiver is really important to help then delegate and assign those roles and responsibilities. Everybody has something to contribute. So it's important to play to everyone's strengths and be clear on what's needed and expected for this specific person in need of care. So, it's every case is unique. It's not one size fits all. And so it's just going to have to be a customized plan that you're building as you go. And it's an ever moving thing that's going to keep changing, and the needs are going to keep changing. And it's important to remember to be flexible to that and keep that in mind. And then just to highlight the point again that it's so important and so often is maybe overlooked, is that the participant in the conversation should be the person who is in need of care. They should be a part of these conversations. They should be involved in the process. And if they have a preference for a role that a specific team member might have, they should be listened to in that. Who are they comfortable with? Who do they have connections with that you might not be aware of or might not be thinking of? And it's really important to keep that in mind as you go through the process of building your team. Alrighty, let's see. Okay, we're on to step 3, making a plan. So now that you have your team outlined with willing caregivers and people who are ready to go, always make sure that you are making a plan with the person that you are caring for at the center of the conversation. This plan doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a formal 20-page document with a beginning, middle, and an end. It doesn't have to look like that. It just needs to be able to meet the person in needs as a primary focus. Their immediate needs, I guess I should say. keeping in mind finances and all the things that we mentioned before, but just, you know, at the forefront should be what are the immediate needs that we need to take care of as a priority. Holding a team meeting. Do you want to take this one, Jeff?
Sure. So a family or team meeting, again, quite often a lot of family members, but it's one way to help you get things organized and to ensure that all of your team members are on the same page when it comes to making and keeping the plan. And I want to stress that something that was in the last slide is to, you know, without it becoming a dissertation, to still have some documentation so that, you know, there's little room for misinterpretation. But meet with your caregiving team. It may take place face to face or conference call or series of emails, so forth. But determine what works best for everybody and set up a system for future communications, which is extremely important. So have a date for the next meeting and so forth. Assess the goals and needs of your caregiving plan. Again, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to anticipate every possible detail that you can come up with. But still, you want it to not leave a lot of room in case it has to go into action quickly. Just try to include immediate needs and broader plans for the future. The caregiver guide that Emily mentioned earlier does offer an assessment of goals and needs. And so you can see that we have listed typical tasks in the areas of home maintenance, health, finances, transportation, and more. For example, if your loved ones if it wants to move in the next year or so, you can assign someone the task of researching locations and facilities. And after you determine your goals, delegate responsibilities. It's time to figure out who will do what. Make sure you determine what task everyone is comfortable performing within their abilities as well. And also be sure that to ask your team members about their preferences. Be open to modifications as the situation and team members' ability to allow may change. And how your loved one needs, how your loved one's needs unfold may differ from what you expect. So it's again, I think there's two things kind of at play here. One is to have a plan, but secondly, have it be flexible because things don't always go exactly to plan. So, and you never know when you have to come up with plan B.
Yeah, that's true. But you should be prepared to have a plan B.
Yes.
Awesome. And I think what COVID era taught all of us when it comes to having team meetings is, you know, everybody is busy, everybody is everywhere. Even if you all live in the same town, it's okay to do things virtually if you have to. You know, and just making sure you remember to write things down and document as you go so that you don't forget things. Okay, finding support, step 4. So if you have come to realize that the scope of care needed for your loved one is beyond what you or your team might be able to provide, it's okay to reach out for extra support. There are a number of ways that you can get the help that you might need. And so we're going to dive into a couple of those here. Types of support. There are many different types of community resources that may be able to provide support. As I mentioned before, your local area agency on aging, I cannot stress enough how key of a resource and a tool this will be in your caregiving journey. They can help connect you to a variety of support services, such as home delivered meals, transportation to and from appointments, adult daycare services. So like Jeff mentioned before, if you're just in need of a break, just, you know, you need to go take yourself out for lunch and just have 5 minutes or whatever. Adult daycare is a great resource. And then area agencies on aging can also help provide care management services and caseworkers that can and specifically help you manage some of the things that we've talked about in some prior slides. You can also check into services offered through the Elder Care Locator. It's a public service of the U.S. Administration on Aging and connects caregivers to local services and supports. And any of the resources that I'm mentioning are both in the physical copy of the Caregiver Resource Guide, which you can download from our website for free, and I will post the links to that in just a second. And also, you can find this through our website, aarp.org. And lastly, you can consult a professional. Oftentimes, your loved one's needs can be complex, especially when health, emotions, finances, things like that are in question or in play. Social workers, nurses, even elder law attorneys, things like that can really, really help you determine what the need is and what services there are out there to help you. And I could do a little plug right here to head to our website and check out our first episode of the Caregiver Weekly series, which featured an interview with an estate planning and elder law attorney. And we asked him all the questions you could ever imagine. And there's some really great resources in that episode as well, if you want to take a deeper dive into all things planning. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I just want to, kind of reinforce something like elder daycare. The loved one's social needs to be for socialization still exist, and quite often it goes better than you ever can imagine, and they're having a blast. And so if you've taken a child to daycare, they are having fun. My daughter ended up being the tour guide at 3 years old in her daycare. Well, the same thing has happened with my mom in her situation, where
Wow.
she kind of shows everybody the ropes, and that's part of the experience. And once you become comfortable with that, your stress level drops quite a bit as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. And then the other part about daycare, just to add to that, is the feeling isolated portion of this. Oh goodness, I'm clicking next and I didn't mean to. Feeling isolated and often, maybe not being able to connect with someone or have many touch points with other human beings during the day. And going to a social setting like this can often just really brighten mood and emotionally, mentally, things like that. It's really important. A couple more ideas that we just wanted to highlight. Oftentimes you might need outside support, and if you are able to recognize that your loved one needs help with daily activities, and if it's in the budget financially to be able to hire help to do simple tasks to make life easier, your local area on aging can help you find these resources, as well as heading to our AARP website, to our Caregiving Resource Center. There's a bunch of information that you can find on there for appropriate services that can help with household tasks, bathing, dressing, things like that, that you might want that extra help and support for. Thinking about safety, at AARP, we want to help as much as we can advocate for people to be able to age in place and stay in their homes for as long as possible. Most older adults want to stay in their own homes for as long as they possibly can. And so how do we help them do that and keep them safe at the same time? So thinking about things like incorporating handrails, grab bars, night lights, adjustable shower seats, things like that in their home to ensure that they are staying safe, but also staying in their home for as long as possible. AARP has what we call our Home Fit Guide, which offers a range of solutions, but it really just provides some wonderful tips, suggestions, worksheets, and resources that will help you figure out how to make your home a lifelong home for your loved one. And we have a Home Fit guidebook, as well as a presentation as well on all things when you're thinking about how to make your home a safer space. So we'll make sure we add that into the chat shortly. Exploring different housing options. If this is a financial possibility for you to consider, there might be housing with supportive services in your area, such as apartment complexes that have dining facilities in them, or laundry services in them, or people who can just check in on your loved one throughout the day. There's many options like this that you could consider as well. And then one last thing I did just want to mention, and I think I touched on this earlier, it's really important to get support for yourself as well in this. And so we do have some support groups. There's a nationwide one that AARP has on Facebook for caregivers, which I can drop the link into the chat at the end, which really just helps you feel like you're not completely alone, but B is a really wonderful way to just share tips and tricks and ideas and things that you've heard and maybe didn't think of until you became a caregiver. Support groups are really wonderful resources for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Jeff?
No, just that in terms of support groups, sometimes the team becomes too close to the trees, see the forest, or however that saying goes. And so sometimes having that outside voice helps you kind of clear your head and to think through situations, and then to actually be able to have better conversations with the team when you go back to them, because you have somebody whose only interest is helping you think through it.
Definitely, that is a great point. Okay, step 5, last but not least, arguably one of the most important steps, is caring for yourself. And I don't say that, I know I smiled when I said that, but I'm serious when I say caring for yourself is so important in all of this. And it shouldn't be overlooked. You need to pay attention to your own health and well-being throughout this to make sure that you are healthy enough and you have the energy to care for the person who needs it. So here are some tips that we're going to go through just to keep in the front of your mind as you go through this process of making a plan. Just remember that you can also tap into resources as a caregiver. Social workers, nurses, and other professionals are there to help you as well. They can help you monitor the care for your loved one if you don't live close by. Things like that you might not think are available and are options, they are. This next one, using technology, if it's in your comfort zone and if it's a possibility for you, this one can alleviate so much anxiety, stress, and worry in terms of just all of the capabilities that are out there in today's day and age. You have the ability to control a thermostat if you're thousands of miles away from it. You have the ability to, check the Ring doorbell and make sure the front door wasn't left open. Just think anything and everything. There's probably an app for that. Or there's some kind of emergency response system that you can have installed, remote monitoring devices, and just every kind of app under the sun exists today that can probably help you feel like you can keep an eye on things, even if you are far away.
And I don't know this exactly, but I'm guessing there are some that are pretty low cost, if not even free, so that it doesn't become a financial situation for you if that's a concern.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. Talking to your employer, if you are still actively working, some employers do offer benefits for caregivers and offer services to support you if you are a caregiver and maybe you didn't expect to be. So make sure you have a look and check in with your HR folks to see what resources are out there through your job, because you might be surprised what you might find. And then review your own finances. It's important to calculate all of your own caregiving related expenses that might not even cross your mind. I think, when we've done some of our advocacy work, one of the most crazy numbers that I always remember is, I think on the average family caregiver in the United States spends around $7,200 a year out of their own pocket caring for a loved one. So just make sure you keep that in mind. Those little things add up. And so just make sure you're reviewing your own finances and you're able to account for those in your personal budget. I think sometimes I often find myself reasoning with, like, you know, well, this is important, so I need to do this, and I haven't always planned for it. But just keeping that in mind, that those expenses do add up.
And they really do. And so we haven't tracked this, but I'm spending a substantial amount of gasoline to visit my mom. On occasion we'll take her, some basic needs like soap, things like that. So, and not charge it back to her. So, and eventually those add up and are affecting our personal budget and personal finances too.
Definitely, gas is a huge one. That's a great point. Talking to your doctor, letting them know that ahead of time that you are a caregiver, so that they can help you navigate a conversation around how you handle stress, or how you handle feeling like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, which I know so many people feel. Advocate for yourself. The Caregiver Advice Record and Enable Act that passed in many states is there to provide for you, and you should consult with your loved one's doctor for training if you are expected to do complex medical tasks at home. Take advantage of caregiving services and support. They're out there to help you and can help you navigate through your own caregiving journey. And don't forget to take a break. It's important to go for a walk, especially when the weather is what it is today. Getting outside, getting enough sleep, eating healthily, and staying connected to your own friends. Sometimes this can consume your whole life. And so you want to make sure that you are factoring in time to take a break and breathe. All right, resources. Feel free to take a picture of this screen so that you don't forget the phone number and also the link to the website. As I mentioned before, many people don't realize AARP.org has so many resources on it. It's hard to wrap my mind around sometimes. Just a variety of information, resources, events, and self-paced learning for caregivers can all be found on our website in our Caregiving Resource Center. There's a phone number there as well if you'd prefer to call and speak to a human. That hotline is open Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and Saturdays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And that phone number can also be found in the physical copy of the caregiving guide as well. The community resource finder you can use to get easy access to resources, community programs, and services through this online directory. This directory is compiled from provider descriptions and public data and made possible by the Alzheimer's Association and AARP. All right. Our last step, or our last page. So we hope that you all enjoyed the session today and found a lot of the information that we shared valuable, or just helped you, see it all mapped out in your mind, so it doesn't feel quite as overwhelming. Our 5 steps, just to recap: starting the conversation, forming your team, making your plan, finding support, and not forgetting to care for yourself are 5 steps. I encourage you to continue learning on this topic, exploring the resources available to you, both through our website, but also in your local area. I really encourage you to look at what resources are out there through your area agency on aging, and some of the other resources that I mentioned. And so I think that about covers everything for today. Jeff, did I miss anything that you wanted to mention before I close out of the slide here and start putting some things in the chat?
I don't think so. I think in a crash course on planning for caregiving, it's been great.
Good. I'm glad you think so. And with that, I'm going to welcome Mary back onto the screen. And I am just copying and pasting really quickly. All of the links that I mentioned are now available in the chat, I believe. So if you want to check anything else out, please head there and click those links to find all the additional resources. Huge thank you to Jeff. And Mary, I'm going to hand over to you to close us out for today. And don't forget to unmute your microphone.
That's always a good idea. I want to thank everybody for attending today, and Jeff and Emily for an outstanding presentation. It's always good for me to have the information reviewed again, things I can use. It's about all the time we have for today. If you've enjoyed this program, I would invite you to spread the word by sharing the event series with your networks, whether by word of mouth or on your social media channels. And to remember, once again, a final reminder, you can always find more information at www.aarp.org/IN. Thank you, and I wish all of you an extraordinary week ahead.